For decades, America's national parks have held a darker reputation than any guidebook admits. Thousands of people, ordinary hikers, hunters, even children, have vanished without a trace. No footprints, no blood, no struggle. These disappearances are part of what researchers call the missing 411 cases, a chilling record of unresolved vanishings across remote forests, valleys, and mountain ranges. Above the tree line, strange lights have been reported, silent shapes drifting through the night sky. Watching, rangers whisper of storms appearing from nowhere, search dogs freezing at the edge of certain clearings, refusing to step forward. Gear is sometimes found meticulously arranged, as if someone or something staged the scene. Could it all be chance? Or are these wilderness sanctuaries hiding something far beyond human understanding? Here's the part that chills even the most skeptical. For decades, government agencies have quietly monitored these anomalies, issuing strict directives to rangers and park officials to log but never publicly disclose unusual vanishings. Even NASA has been drawn into the mystery, tracking inexplicable aerial phenomena above these regions with instruments designed for deep space observation. Classified files hint at sightings, sensor anomalies, and reports never released to the public. The official story remains silence, denial, controlled confusion. Yet the patterns are undeniable. Something or someone is out there, watching, recording, and waiting. And for the ones who never return, the government keeps its silence, hiding secrets that perhaps should never be revealed. But before we begin, please consider subscribing, and don't forget to like and share this video with your friends. I'd love to hear where you're watching from. Thank you all for joining me. Now, let's dive in. America has long pursued military experiments in secret, projects so classified that entire landscapes are transformed into testing grounds without public knowledge. Remote national parks, dense forests, and rugged wilderness areas have quietly served as laboratories for cutting-edge technology, some so advanced it defies comprehension. And the official narrative? Silence, denials, occasional vague statements about national security. Yet over the years, thousands have vanished in these parks under circumstances that don't make sense. Footprints, personal belongings, even entire campsites are left behind, as if the missing simply dissolved into the air. Some claim these disappearances are accidents, lost hikers, or rogue wildlife. But those who've seen the patterns, the lights in the sky, the sudden weather anomalies, the way search dogs halt at invisible boundaries, know something else is at play, something deliberate, something watched. On June 14, 2012, in Yosemite National Park, Robert Keller, a 56-year-old hiker from Sacramento, stepped onto the Tenaya Lake Trail with a small pack and his usual hiking gear. It was a clear morning, the sun reflecting off the granite cliffs, children laughing nearby, tourists snapping photos. His wife, Linda, recalled him saying, "I'll be back in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. That was all it took." When search teams arrived less than an hour later, Robert was gone. No footprints, no scuffed brush, nothing but his camera and phone left neatly on a boulder near the trailhead strapped off, unclaimed. Rangers whispered nervously. "It's as if he was removed," one muttered. Then came the reports from local campers. Strange lights, silent shapes drifting across the sky, hovering low near where Robert disappeared. Some claimed they heard a hum, almost mechanical, almost alive. Helicopters combed the area for hours. Thermal imaging scanners cut across the cliffs. Teams of trained search dogs were brought in, but many refused to move past certain clearings, barking or whining before retreating. Over 50 volunteers scoured the surrounding 5 miles, yet nothing emerged. Each hour heightened anxiety. Then, federal agents arrived without warning. Men in dark uniforms, badges obscured, ordered all personnel back. Helicopters were grounded, volunteers dismissed. The search for Robert Keller had become classified. No one explained why. No official report would ever fully surface. Only whispers. Yosemite is a testing ground, some said, recalling older rumors about government projects long hidden in the backcountry. Linda, desperate for answers, began combing online forums, local archives, and missing 411 case files. She discovered unnerving parallels. Dozens of similar disappearances across national parks Yellowstone, Glacier, Grand Teton, where people vanished in areas difficult to access, often with sudden weather changes or unexplained lights reported just before. Some hikers left behind personal items in a precise, almost staged manner, just like Robert's camera and phone. These weren't random accidents. Patterns emerged. The wilderness, remote yet publicly accessible, was systematically hosting something else, something hidden behind the veil of national security. One former park ranger, who requested anonymity, revealed the chilling truth. "I saw a craft once," he said, voice low, glancing over his shoulder. "Not a plane, not a helicopter. It hovered, lights pulsating, and then the trail below it went silent. Birds stopped, dogs froze. A hiker I later heard was missing right there. That's when I realized the disappearances weren't natural. Something else was happening. Something the government knows about." His hands shook. "They call them projects. Black projects. And this is where they test them. Right under our noses." Weeks after Robert's disappearance, Linda received an anonymous email. It contained coordinates deep in Yosemite's backcountry and a single line: "Do not trust what you see. Some trails are not meant to be walked." Against her better judgment, she and a close friend ventured near the location, guided by GPS and curiosity. The forest was unnervingly quiet. Sunlight filtered through leaves in strange, almost geometric patterns. Then came the low hum, mechanical yet alive. Shadows moved overhead, shifting against the sun. They fled, terrified, but not before her friend swore. They saw a blurred, metallic shape descend briefly toward a clearing where Robert's belongings were said to have been. Journalists later pieced together snippets from military whistleblowers. Certain areas of national parks had been used for experimental aircraft, electromagnetic field testing, even psychological observation of unknowing visitors. UFO sightings coincided frequently with areas of high disappearance rates. The inference was clear. The UFOs might not be extraterrestrial at all. They could be advanced military technology or surveillance tools designed for secretive testing. Those caught in the wrong place at the wrong time simply disappeared, leaving families like Linda's grasping for answers that the government would never provide. Linda refused to give up. She compiled testimonies, searched for pattern correlations, and contacted former military engineers who hinted at projects beyond declassified knowledge. She began mapping locations of the disappearances alongside historical UFO reports. The overlap was staggering. Wilderness areas, government testing sites, missing hikers, and unexplained aerial phenomena all coincided in a pattern too precise to be coincidence. The theory that Yosemite and other parks were deliberately being used as Black Project grounds became undeniable. By the following year, Linda had compiled a list of 50 similar disappearances in the Sierra Nevada alone. Each had strange similarities: last seen in remote areas, reports of aerial phenomena, personal items neatly staged, search dogs refusing to advance, and sudden weather changes. Some of the missing were found months later, disoriented, claiming no memory of what happened. Their stories dismissed as hallucinations or psychological trauma. Others were never found. The pattern repeated across decades, stretching across states and national parks, each linked by secrecy and the unexplained presence of high-tech, often airborne devices. Even local residents noticed unusual activity. Hikers reported trails that seemed wrong or displaced, compasses spinning inexplicably. Campers heard distant humming, saw lights flickering in geometric patterns, and sometimes felt as if they were being observed. Linda began interviewing them, recording every detail, creating a chilling map of human disappearance overlaid with sightings of unidentified aerial objects. It was a web of eerie coincidences, or perhaps evidence of something deliberately orchestrated. Years later, Linda returned to Tenaya Lake. The water shimmered in the afternoon sun. Children splashed at the edge, oblivious to the dark history surrounding the cliffs. Yet she knew the truth. The mountains watched, the trees concealed secrets, and above, machines or crafts, disguised as UFOs, silently monitored the wilderness. And somewhere out there, someone, maybe a hiker, maybe a wanderer, was taken, pulled into a black project the public would never fully understand. She touched the boulder where Robert's belongings had been left, closed her eyes, and whispered a promise she never could have kept. "I will not forget you." The forest remained silent. The air trembled with unseen energy, and for anyone who strays too far, the shadows linger, and some will never return. UFOs and strange lights are one thing, but what if the vanishing hikers, hunters, and campers weren't being taken by machines or humans at all? What if the forest itself, the mountains, and the lakes were gateways, doors to another dimension? On September 8, 2014, in Glacier National Park, Montana, 42-year-old biologist Henry Carter stepped off the Iceberg Lake Trail to photograph a rare mountain goat. He never returned. Search teams combed the rugged terrain for days. Helicopters scanned the cliffs. Dogs sniffed every nook and cranny. Nothing. No footprints. No signs of struggle. Not a single clue. Rangers murmured about sudden storms and inexplicable fogs that seemed to roll in and vanish without reason. Then came the local reports, strange shimmering distortions in the air, almost like heat waves, only colder. Witnesses described the shimmer as a vertical veil, almost like light bent strangely, twisting the scenery behind it. And Henry? He vanished right where the veil was spotted. Weeks later, a park volunteer named Emma Hughes described an encounter near the trailhead. She and her nephew were hiking when she noticed a strange ripple in the forest light. It was like the air itself was bending, she recalled, voice trembling. I could see the path behind it, but wrong. Trees looked taller, rocks in impossible angles. My nephew screamed when he stepped through, but I grabbed him. Investigators later confirmed that Iceberg Lake has had multiple missing 411 cases over the decades, and several had eyewitness accounts of similar shimmering anomalies. Some scientists dismissed the claims as optical illusions caused by heat and moisture, but the precision of these events and the frequency with which people vanished near them could not be explained. Emma's story spread quietly online, gaining attention from amateur physicists and fringe researchers. One theory emerged: interdimensional portals. Areas where the laws of physics are temporarily warped, producing spaces where a human could step through and emerge elsewhere. Perhaps another time, another plane of existence, or a hidden pocket within our own. This sounded like science fiction. Yet the sheer number of disappearances, sometimes involving multiple individuals in different decades at the same locations, begged for an explanation beyond bears, hypothermia, or lost trails. Something was happening at a level that defied normal understanding. Henry's wife, Laura, refused to accept the idea that her husband simply got lost. She studied topographical maps, weather patterns, and local folklore. Several elder residents in the area spoke of the thin places, mountain valleys, and river bends where reality itself seemed fragile. Some told stories of hunters and hikers vanishing, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days, and returning disoriented, unable to explain what had happened. Others never returned at all. Lavra began correlating these reports with actual missing 411 cases and realized that Henry's disappearance fit the pattern almost perfectly. Remote terrain, sudden atmospheric anomalies, absence of physical evidence, and strange eyewitness sightings of distorted air or light. A retired geophysicist, Dr. Alan Winslow, who had studied geomagnetic anomalies in Montana for decades, offered a chilling explanation. "The Earth isn't uniform," he said. "Certain zones, often around high-altitude lakes or fault lines, exhibit temporary distortions in the local electromagnetic field. We've never been able to measure them consistently. But in theory, if consciousness is tied to quantum fields, and those fields warp, it's possible a human could be shifted outside the conventional 3 dimensions." His words made Lara shiver. "Are you saying he fell into another dimension?" she asked. Dr. Winslow nodded slowly. "I'm saying it's conceivable. And there's precedent. Evidence supporting the interdimensional theory came from hikers who returned after vanishing for hours. One man described stepping into a foggy clearing and seeing the landscape repeat in impossible loops. Trees growing upside down, rocks floating mid-air. Time felt wrong. He experienced an eternity of disorientation in what was perhaps only minutes in our world. Another hiker claimed she saw a glowing vertical seam of light stretch across a canyon, like a doorway, before she felt herself pulled toward it and fell to the ground in a panic. Local authorities dismissed these accounts as hallucinations induced by fear, but the consistency of the stories and the corroboration with missing individuals made skeptics pause. Lavra joined a small team of researchers, mapping portal zones in Glacier National Park. They noted clusters where multiple disappearances and odd atmospheric phenomena coincided. Hikers reported brief, unexplainable vertigo, magnetic compasses spinning wildly, sudden drops in temperature, and eerie hums in areas with high disappearance rates. One volunteer, Alex Green, ventured near Iceberg Lake and recorded a video of a shimmering column of air that seemed to distort everything behind it. The footage, analyzed later by physicists, showed refractive anomalies inconsistent with wind, heat, or light refraction. It was as if the fabric of reality itself had been stretched. Meanwhile, locals shared legends of the other side of the mountains. They described people crossing invisible thresholds, sometimes returning changed, disoriented, pale, and terrified, or not at all. The patterns were centuries old. Native American oral histories spoke of spirit paths and places where the veil between worlds was thin. Modern science dismissed these stories as mythology, but when combined with missing 411 data, eyewitness accounts, and the shimmering distortions recorded by researchers, a narrative began to emerge that was difficult to ignore. Certain locations in national parks were acting as gateways, interdimensional portals that occasionally claimed the unwary. Lavra, desperate for answers, returned to Iceberg Lake with Emma Hughes. The day was calm, sunlight glittering off the water, birds chirping, almost normal. But then, a faint shimmer appeared across a clearing, twisting the light like heat waves over a desert road, except cooler, denser. The team froze. Their compasses spun wildly. Emma whispered, "It's here." A sudden wind gust knocked branches down, creating a natural screen. Laura stepped closer and felt a tug, subtle but undeniable, as if invisible fingers grazed her shoulders. They retreated, shaken, but not before recording the shimmer in detail. The footage later showed strange distortions in the air, almost as if the world itself had been folded in on itself. Months later, the research team published preliminary findings. Clusters of disappearances, correlated with electromagnetic anomalies, and eyewitness reports of distorted air or light. The phenomena, once dismissed as legend, now had empirical support. Yet the government refused to acknowledge the interdimensional hypothesis, maintaining the narrative of lost hikers, accidental falls, and rogue wildlife. Lavra understood something fundamental. If these portals were real, they were not accidents. They were natural phenomena, yes, but ones humans had yet to comprehend. And for those who stepped too close or stumbled unknowingly through the shimmering veils, the consequences were final. Lavra still returns to Glacier National Park each summer. Iceberg Lake glimmers as it always has, majestic and serene. Hikers laugh along the trails, oblivious to the hidden dangers. But she watches, cautious, scanning the edges of the forest and cliffs. Sometimes she glimpses faint distortions in the sunlight, brief twists in the air that vanish before she can blink. The memory of Henry lingers, and she knows that the wilderness holds doors no human is meant to open. Doors that, once crossed, may never let you return. The forests of Olympic National Park seemed alive, whispering in ways hikers couldn't explain. On August 21, 2016, 38-year-old wilderness guide Marcus Reynolds disappeared during a routine afternoon hike. Marcus knew every trail, every ridge, and hidden creek in the park. He was careful, experienced, always prepared. Yet his group watched him climb a small incline, and then he was gone. No footprints. No sound. Nothing. Only his water bottle, placed neatly on a rock as if waiting. Rangers murmured quietly. Another missing 411 case. Disappearances in this park were unusual, but not unheard of. What disturbed them most wasn't just the lack of evidence. It was the accounts of low, vibrating hums in the air, an invisible pressure that made skin crawl and hair stand on end. Witnesses claimed fleeting blue lights hovered just above the ridge. One teenager insisted he felt an invisible hand graze his shoulder, tugging toward the glow. The search began immediately. Helicopters circled above, slicing through the forest canopy, cameras scanning for heat signatures. Ground teams fanned out, calling Marcus' name across the cliffs and valleys. Dogs tracked his scent for a few hundred feet before stopping abruptly, ears back, barking, refusing to cross certain invisible boundaries. Radios hissed. GPS devices spun as if confused. Volunteers spoke in hushed tones of a strange vibration, a low hum that seemed to originate from nowhere, yet made every person uneasy. Some reported a tingling sensation, a sudden weakness, as if energy itself was being pulled out of their bodies. A retired Air Force technician, called in unofficially, surveyed the ridge in silence for hours. He finally spoke, voice low, hesitant. They're not just observing, they're extracting vitality, life energy. Humans are. Sources. He traced a finger through the air, as if sketching invisible lines. We don't fully understand the mechanics, but patterns exist. Marcus? He's part of it. The words sent a shiver down the spines of the park rangers standing nearby. Whispers of energy harvesting spread quietly among the volunteers, though no official channels acknowledged the claim. Marcus' family refused to accept simple explanations. His sister, Elaine, began poring over archives of missing 411 cases, cross-referencing reports, dates, and locations. A terrifying pattern emerged. People vanished in remote regions, often leaving belongings in strange arrangements with no signs of struggle. Some returned disoriented, pale, claiming only partial memories of strange lights or shifting landscapes. Others, like Marcus, never returned. Survivors consistently described the sensation of being drained, of their energy being slowly siphoned, leaving them exhausted and disoriented. Local witnesses offered more eerie details. Campers spoke of tents shaking violently without wind, glowing orbs drifting silently, and faint humming vibrating through the earth itself. One man, lost for hours, returned pale and trembling. He claimed he had been pulled into a column of light, an invisible structure that seemed alive, feeding off his vitality. Another hiker, trapped near a cliff edge, reported the air thickening around him, making every step harder. His limbs weighted as if an unseen force were leeching his strength. Authorities dismissed these accounts as hallucinations or fear-induced stress, but the sheer number of similar reports could not be ignored. Elaine joined a team of independent researchers, mapping electromagnetic anomalies, atmospheric distortions, and faint energy pulses across the park. They discovered clusters that corresponded almost perfectly with historical disappearance data. A small device detected fluctuations in bioelectric fields near the ridge where Marcus vanished anomalies inconsistent with natural sources. As the team explored, the sensation of energy drain became apparent. Volunteers felt sudden fatigue, heart rates racing or dropping without cause, and sometimes a tingling or pulling sensation along their limbs. One evening, a member fainted unexpectedly near a clearing, only to awaken moments later with no memory of the event. Night fell, and the team camped near the ridge. The wind whispered through the dense canopy, moving strangely, almost deliberately. A faint blue light pulsed in the distance, shimmering, bending the world behind it. Instruments went haywire. Cameras captured flashes of light and distortions that had no explanation. Alex, one of the team members, approached cautiously and felt a tug at his chest, subtle but undeniable. His energy drained rapidly, leaving him weak, almost disoriented. The forest seemed alive, aware, and observing every movement. Shadows twisted unnaturally. Even compasses spun erratically. The researchers compared this site to other national parks: Glacier, Yosemite, Sierra Nevada. High disappearance rates consistently coincided with electromagnetic anomalies, strange lights, and equipment malfunctions. Survivors' accounts shared common elements: energy depletion, disorientation, faint glowing lights, and strange distortions of physical reality. The conclusion was chilling. These disappearances were not accidents. They were deliberate extractions, possibly for purposes beyond human understanding. The entities, be they extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or highly advanced machines, required human life energy. Those unprepared vanished completely. Months passed. Elaine returned to the ridge multiple times, documenting subtle changes. At dawn, mist curled along the slopes in unnatural patterns. Shadows seemed to move independently of the sun. Birds fell silent. A faint hum resonated in the air, vibrating in her chest. She felt it again, the tug, subtle but impossible to ignore. The ridge had become a locus of energy activity, a point where the forest itself seemed to channel unseen forces. Footprints appeared temporarily, only to vanish as if erased. Objects moved slightly overnight, rearranged in patterns too precise to be coincidence. Eyewitnesses reported similar phenomena across the park. Campers described tents shaken by invisible forces. Hikers recalled strange lights, pulsing in rhythm with their heartbeat. One woman, trapped for 3 hours in a foggy canyon, described the air pressing against her chest, draining her strength and tugging her toward a faint blue glow she could barely perceive. She escaped, but returned shaken and disoriented. Accounts like these were no longer isolated. They painted a horrifying picture. Elaine's team used drones equipped with infrared cameras to monitor the ridge. They recorded pulses of energy emanating from the ground in the evening, rising into the canopy, forming patterns that did not align with natural physics. The air shimmered with an iridescent glow. Occasional blue lights hovered briefly, then vanished without trace. Observers reported a chilling sensation, a low hum that resonated inside the chest, pressure that felt like it pulled the very life from the body. The team began piecing together a model. Certain locations, often remote and difficult to access, acted as natural conduits for energy extraction. Terrain features, local magnetic anomalies, and unusual atmospheric conditions combined to create zones where life energy could be drawn from humans. Those unlucky enough to enter these zones fully, without awareness or preparation, risked total removal, vanishing entirely, leaving behind nothing but scattered personal items, an empty camp, or sometimes just silence. Months turned into a year. Elaine, haunted by Marcus' disappearance, returned alone. The ridge was calm, sunlight filtering softly through the trees. Birds chirped, a deceptive serenity. Yet she could feel it, the tug at her chest, subtle but unmistakable. She moved cautiously, observing the slope where Marcus had vanished. A faint shimmer appeared in her peripheral vision, bending the light, twisting reality. She stepped back, heart racing, realizing the forest's truth. It was alive in ways humanity could not comprehend, and it had taken her brother. Elaine left the park that evening, but the ridge remained. Visitors passed through, oblivious to the danger lurking in the air. For those attuned, the hum and the shimmer were signs of the extraction process. Sometimes energy could be felt draining subtly from humans, sometimes rapidly, until the person disappeared entirely. Marcus had been one of many, and the forest continued its silent work, hidden beneath layers of trees and mist, patient and insatiable. Years later, reports continued, hikers vanished. Campers returned pale, disoriented, muttering about low hums and pulsing lights. Elaine maintained her records, compiling clusters of disappearances, environmental anomalies, and eyewitness accounts. The conclusion was undeniable. The forest, the ridge, the very land itself had become a conduit for energy harvesting, orchestrated by forces beyond human understanding. And for anyone stepping off the trail, even briefly, the risk remained: one misstep, one glance at the wrong shimmer, and they could be gone forever.